Yeah?
Yes,
Looks like we got a couple folks in the channel already. No one we know.
it is. Looks like people we know. I'm glad
Well-
that Bearzu is here.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Max and Ben Save the World, a men's mental health podcast, where we talk about men and the topics that matter most to them, and hopefully make a difference in your day. A few disclaimers before we begin. We might disagree with you or your personally held beliefs. Everything you hear on this podcast is just kind of us, right? And so if you disagree with us, we encourage like a positive dialogue, and we want you to stick around, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable for you. We'll do the same. Also, this podcast is not therapy. Also, go to therapy. You can find a therapist on Psychology Today by looking them up by insurance, gender, or whatever kind of thing you're looking for. So, without further ado, Ben has our recognition to start off the night.
Yes. So, for the first thing that we're going to do in our recognition tonight, we are going to be holding space for defying gravity. So, if you care to find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves the chance to fly. And if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. To those who ground me, take a message back from me. Tell them how I'm defying gravity. I'm flying high, defying gravity.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm glad that we've held space for that today.
I want to explain to the people who are just as confused as me, because I don't have TikTok, and apparently that has been a very big thing on TikTok in the last week, is holding space for the lyrics of the legendary song Wicked's Defying Gravity.
Yes,
So-
people are holding space with that. And that's
some-
really powerful. They're finding power in the lyrics.
It's some serious therapist jargon, holding space.
Yeah, I actually discovered because of this, I had two different people that I talk to regularly that just, as someone who encounters the phrase holding space for all the time, I just thought everybody else used this phrase. I had two different people today ask me, what does that mean? Why is this going viral? And I had one of those whoa. Yeah, I experience I feel like in the last 5 years, I've had so many conversations with
Mental health professionals.
mental health professionals
Yeah.
that use a lot of therapy jargon, and maybe perhaps some of these conversations don't always lead to much more than saying essentially the same thing as thoughts and prayers, is my experience of holding space. And TikTok has been having quite a blast with that.
I think that there are definitely overused phrases in therapy. It
Yeah.
used to be, how does that make you feel? And
Yeah.
I think holding space is one of those that...
Gaslighting is one of these recent examples of where therapy language has moved into the popular cultural zeitgeist.
APA just put out a whole list of overused psychological terms.
Yeah.
And gaslighting was actually one of the top ones. But holding space is basically saying creating a place for you to put your feelings in a safe place. Which, to be honest, is kind of a part of what therapy is. But if you're only holding space, sometimes that is not sufficient for getting better.
Yeah, I think that I think that when I first encountered it, and if I'm being kind and trying to define it well, I imagine that somebody is, they're sharing the space that they're talking about is a space on their plate. It's a space on their list of things that they do or the way that they encounter or work through a problem. That, if I say I'm holding space for all of the people who are struggling with the conflict in Israel and Palestine right now, I would be saying that I'm doing something in acknowledgement of the privilege that I live in here in the United States, of not experiencing violence in my back door or in my backyard.
And I think that that's valuable. That
Yeah.
holding space for things like that can hold value. But yes, I think that what I understand from Ben now is that TikTok is having a really big field
Having a
day
field day
with
with
the
that.
way that this one particular interview went through with Wicked. And
Yeah.
we could probably talk about therapy jargon all night, couldn't we?
Yes, but speaking of the theater, our actual recognition for the day is for actor Patrick Page. Patrick Page is an actor that has been on Broadway for many years, the better part of the last 30 years or so. Notably was the Green Goblin in the original run of Spider-Man Escape the Dark, that was very famous for having multiple Spider-Man actors break their backs on.
Did not know.
And the run ended up being canceled. Also played Hades in Hadestown on Broadway over the last like 4 or 5 years. He recently came here local with his one-man play, which is a study of Shakespeare's villains. And it was an incredible experience. And as somebody that is going with the inescapable lens of having been educated in therapy, I was incredibly moved by the fact that this actor, who in all rights is essentially giving a doctoral level lecture on the literary understanding of villainy and human evil within the human nature from the lens of Shakespeare. And he chose in that masterclass that he did, wherein he is both giving you this academic information, but seamlessly weaving together actual monologues and dialogues from Shakespeare's works to highlight what he's talking about and interconnect it with a message of inclusion, as well as a lens and understanding that some of these aspects of villainy that are described in Shakespeare's works, and as a result, all of Western literature since, because everything is related to Shakespeare, there's these components that look a lot like what we would find in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual today. And in doing that, and in closing his show, he shared a message of advocating for mental health. And it caused me to go look into his work. And so he has actually done quite a number of podcast and interview appearances, and is regularly at his own shows, meet and greets with fans, things like that, very open about his experiences with the mental health system. He has shared that he's had numerous diagnoses, I think he said 6 or 7, over the course of the last 20 years, ranging from things like bipolar disorder to depression, which he's currently diagnosed with today. And what I thought was really unique, and a way that he talks differently than other advocates that are in the same space, is how unafraid to approach the conversation around medicine that he is. He's both unashamed to share that he has attempted to self-medicate with both legal and illegal substances in his lifetime, and the brunt recognition that didn't find completeness or happiness for him, as well as being very open about his experiences with medication management and not being able to successfully find the right medication for his depression until recently, and how that took numerous trial and errors, and his overall message of how worth it is to continue to try for yourself, I think is really empowering. And I want to recognize somebody that is a man in this space that is lifting up other men and shining a light on mental health.
It's really hard to be a guy and to admit that something's wrong. I think that's one of the reasons why I really try to create a unique space for guys to feel good in therapy. It sounds like Patrick Page is doing a lot of really great things, honestly. Yeah. I will say the one thing that I like about Shakespeare is how ambiguous and morally ambiguous like just a lot of the plays are, because I feel like today there's a lot more just like good and evil, very simple plots, but I feel like Shakespeare always has this like, I'm not quite sure who was right all the time in Hamlet. And I like that, and it really it makes me think a little bit deeper, and
I think that's really cool.
As a therapist, I always appreciate that.
That was one of the points that he brought up, or was one of the reasons he suggested that for why he chose Shakespeare of all writers to be the person that he studied and then compiled these works together, was he suggested that Shakespeare was really the first writer in Western history to move away from villains being concepts like death or corruption themselves, and moving to things like, he actually said, The Merchant of Venice, with its Jewish merchant villain, having a reasonable background of why he would hate the people that he's doing business with, and why he would do the evil things that he is, because he has been oppressed his entire life.
Yeah.
And he has a soliloquy to the audience where he says, if you cut me, do I not bleed the same as you, and many other similar things. And if you do not wrong me, should I not revenge the same as you? And Patrick Page suggested in his argument and the thesis of his play that it rests upon the fact that Shakespeare was the first writer to do that, to say, nowadays all of Hollywood is all about like, ooh, but what about that villain's spicy backstory? Look at Wicked, Defying Gravity is the spin-off, the unlicensed spin-off of the Wizard of Oz's villain, rewritten so that she has a tragic, unfortunate mirror series of events as Dorothy.
Yeah, look at the popularity of the Joker movies.
Yes, look at the popularity of the Joker movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, no.
Anyway,
we'll side on theater there.
Yeah, Patrick Page was our recognition for the day. What's our topic, Max?
Our main topic for tonight is AI.
AI,
and especially AI as it relates to mental health. And so, there's a lot of places that you can access AI on the web nowadays. It feels like it's quite prevalent. I know that a lot of folks have probably heard of like AI art, going to, I remember Googling for the first time AI art and finding hotpot.ai and, typing things in there and seeing what I could get out. As well as like ChatGPT is probably the one that most people have found out. I know that if I often need a question answered, I might go to ChatGPT just to see what's up. If you've never played with ChatGPT before, I certainly know most people that I have talked to have done that. Ben, do you know about studies about AI?
Do I know about studies about AI?
Yeah.
I don't think I do. Do you have studies for me about AI?
I don't, but I think that it's just a really new phenomenon. There's not a lot of research about it. But more or less people are interacting with, bots on the web, which, to be fair, like chatbots have existed for years, but I feel like the AI, revolution has come in the last few years. I remember my PhD program advisor talked about going to a conference and seeing that, someone had created an entire, therapist education course out of just AI, and it just caused gasps in the audience of like, oh my God, like, what is that? And I was like, well, I mean, that sounds about right. Like, sounds like par for the course from what I'm understanding about AI. People will, assign macros or whatever to do their entire job on AI. And I think that overall, as a society, it's really causing us a lot of anxiety, just as a whole body, that, people are going to be replaced by AI in the AI revolution in the future, which, I think definitely causes guys some worry, especially.
Look at the trade union agreement with the dock workers on the East Coast that stopped a large portion of our economy just a week or two ago, was over stipulations regarding automation and AI use within the workforce, and the union won in its requests that there be stipulations in their contract that companies that use the logistics and docking services on the East Coast that have union dock workers on their boats and on their docks aren't allowed to use certain automation tools. I think it was for like 15 or 25 years.
Wow.
And the question that really came up around that was first of all, like, was this a win for workers or not?
Yeah.
And then beyond that is, if workers had lost, what does that lead to some kind of greater good in the future? Are we slowing the wheels of progress by interrupting AI's naturally taking its course? Because eventually it will overcome those things. Yeah, for the livelihood of people.
Well, at the same time, I think that those guys probably want to keep working, and they want to provide for their family.
Absolutely.
And I think that one thing that, especially traditionally, a lot of men gained their, manhood, if you will, from working and from gaining money. And to see that threatened, I think a lot of guys are going to want to defend that.
Yeah. And I would also suggest that I think one of the things that we as a society, whether we want to or not, this is prescriptive as much as it is, an admission that it probably won't happen, but I think we need to address our connection of masculinity to our working output under a system like capitalism. Immediately when I think about those things, I have so often in my mind, I can't escape the thought when I think about humanity that one of, if not the oldest records of human civilization is a thigh bone that we have found that was repaired. That one of the earliest things that separates us from other simian ancestors is that we clearly, at some point before we even developed language, started caring for people that weren't contributing as much as they were taking from the whole. And so when I think about things like that, I immediately, am drawn to this moral question of, do our identities really need to be tied to the amount that we can make the shareholders more money, right?
I think there's a difference between the amount of money that you're making the shareholders versus doing something because it makes you feel like you're good at something. Everyone wants to feel like they're good at something. I think that we see that a lot with teenage boys who maybe don't feel like they're doing very good in school, but they go all in on Fortnite because they really want to be like, I'm good at this. I can handle this. I can practice at this, and I can do this.
There's a developing desire for the demonstration of mastery, and that's alliterative.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
To demonstrate mastery means something, and for a lot of guys, I think that definitely was.
What Erickson stage is that? Teenage boys.
Oh, crap, dude. You're going to make me do my preliminary oral exam on the podcast right now.
Autonomy versus independence.
Yeah. Autonomy versus independence. That sounds right.
So, demonstrating self-sufficiency. One's capability to do something on their own. The completion of that little toddler that you had to struggle with, whether or not are you going to help them tie their shoes or are you going to let them work it out on their own, develops an identity that they then later as a teenager can... in a healthy environment, we've passed all of these steps. As, best possible outcome, the two choices you're faced as a teenager are you going to become a part of the crowd? Are you going to become a poser, right? I think was our generation's like, are you gonna, I think of it, this is my personal experience being applied to this concept, clinical concept, but for me, it was I never had any individual independent reason to want a Hollister t-shirt. But, that was the hip, popular, cool brand when we were in high school.
And Abercrombie.
Things like that. Those branded t-shirts or the jeans or whatever that everybody was wearing. And I, wouldn't, at the time, have, independently on my own sought out this product and purchased it for myself.
But because there was a social pressure to do it, is what you would say.
Yeah.
So you would say that there's a social pressure to feel like you have mastery over something, as opposed to it's internal.
Yeah, that identity formation versus going with the crowd, and I think a mark of success that Erickson would describe in those stages at that point, right, is if you're not somebody that uniquely and individually is wow, Hollister and Abercrombie is cool, and you're a teenager and it's normal and healthy that you try on different fits, different ideas, different personalities, different components of yourself, leaning into the things that you care about or don't care about, trying out for sports and for theater, and that identity formation stage, the important thing or this mark of success there is coming away from it with a mostly, or as best one can have, positive answer of which of those things fit me the best.
I also think that it's to me, it's not only external that folks are wanting to work or do something that makes themselves feel good. I think that it's partially internal and partially external, because I know that if I have been out of the gym for a little while and I'm not doing as well there as I normally am, I don't feel as good about myself.
Sure.
I have those moments. If I'm, maybe not doing my best work as a therapist one day, I will go, you know what, I didn't feel super good about myself that day. But the day that I come in and, of the random sampling of Max had, a perfect routine that day and is feeling super super good and is so on it. When I, kill that, trauma session, like I'm feeling great. And there's a meaning in that that's internal to me.
Yeah.
That's separate from, someone is thinking, which also will feel good. But I think that, one of the reasons that AI feels really threatening for people and why it caused gasps in that, group of counselor educators is because they're worried about being replaced, that they're not going to have value, that they're not going to bring anything, and they're going to have to find another source for their own competence, but also for their own livelihood.
Which I think is something that we should talk about. I wrote that down, actually, as both of us come from the lens of LPCCs, which in the state of Minnesota, licensed practicing clinical counselor.
Yeah.
That education path, that path to mastery and being a therapist has its tradition or has its roots in career counseling, as the origins of mental health.
It's a part of it.
Therapy, right, comes out of originally career counselors, because at one point it was either being locked away in a psychiatric facility or going to somebody to help you with your career, right? And we've decoupled, right, identity from one's career.
Psychologists
in that way.
Have been around for a little longer, though.
Yes, and it works in differing ways. But again, one of the things that differentiates the LPCC from, say, a marriage and family therapist or from a social worker is particularly the historical lens of vocational or career counseling. And I think that
is true.
Coming from that lens, it's important to stop and think about, as advocates for humankind and as for workers, what does the implication of this? I mean, it seems to be across fields, whether you're somebody that is doing something labor intensive or manual, or somebody that is doing something that is less labor intensive or physically labor intensive. It seems to be that everybody's got this fear that AI is coming for their jobs. And as people that, whose job it is to be ready for whoever comes into our offices, what do we do about that? What do we think about AI coming for everybody's jobs?
Well, I think that it's definitely going to cause them some anxiety, and the problem is that anxiety really lives off of what you don't know, and you don't really know the future.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really hard for a lot of folks, because, it's really hard to say if AI will come for their jobs. But for a lot of people are using AI to also make their jobs easier. They'll completely automate their jobs, and then they'll just collect a paycheck and not even do anything.
Well, and look at education. From young people all the way up to particularly the younger generation of the workforce, people are using AI to do menial tasks left and right. There's all sorts of people using AIs like ChatGPT and things to just put their college homework into and filling it out. And there's these conversations that I'm finding in online space, educator adjacent spaces, about how are we going to know if the answers are AI or not, with examples like an answer that you would only get from a prompted AI that isn't following the sequence of questions that kids are handwriting in. And the answer is we will know, because fundamentally once we've reached a machine brain that is capable of copying a human, we're having a different conversation about consciousness and the ethics and the morality of keeping that machine alive or not.
Yeah.
And until that day, it's going to continue to be relevant that we talk about the ethics and the morality of actually doing your homework, actually doing your own work, or not, right? If you can automate a task at work in such a way that, you're more efficient by just typing this prompt into an AI and getting your mass email formatted, attached, and sent out, go ahead and do that, right?
Yeah. However, I think that students who are using AI to answer all of their questions online, they're probably going to run into some concerns of, they're not feeling like there's anything driving them in life a little bit. They don't have something that they're working for, something that they're good at, because they haven't experienced the demonstration of mastery that comes from completing something that they were actually good at. And you have to try different things sometimes to do that too.
Yeah. I wonder if different fields of mastery won't come about, though.
I think that there's that too. There's kind of the old man in the sky at me being like, you kids and your AI, like how much is it actually going to change things? But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's people are having to learn how to write prompts for AI, and I think especially as therapists, we should consider how AI can help our jobs.
Yeah.
Even though some of us might be worried if they're replacing us. I do know that even on our last episode, I mentioned like AI coaches in certain apps that kind of seem to be like a therapist, but they have a collection of canned responses and algorithms, and they try and respond based on kind of like what you're saying, but it's not necessarily the same thing as a real therapist.
Yeah. I do think that I think about often the amount of times that I was told in my education when I was younger that, I mean, I literally had a teacher pull out several times a calculator and hold it up to the class and say, "You're not going to have one of these in your pocket in the grocery store." And they're wrong. I do.
Look and behold, right? We have the phone.
And so I wonder if these conversations about AI wherein, we're thinking like, oh, you're not going to have any level of mastery because all you do is how to ask AI what to do for you. If in some level we aren't those same teachers holding up the calculator. And I guess this is a hopeful perspective, that I hope we are those teachers holding up the calculator and saying, you're not going to have this in your pocket, ignorant of the fact that, a whole new field of, the way that we interact with intelligent or machine learning systems is at the forefront, and that technology could completely change in a way that we haven't thought about, and that, maybe we do lose jobs, and many of them, but the hopeful thought is that new jobs like being somebody who can navigate machine learning systems are created.
Yeah. Right? I think that I can accept the young people will have AI as a skill that they are competent at, and that there will also be, I mean, I'd imagine, honestly, if I was growing up with AI, I would be looking at what else can I learn that is actually making me feel good, rather than just typing things to AI, or if I'm really into that, mastering the writing of AI prompting. I think that the people who will probably suffer from the AI revolution are the older people, the people who were in that union that had that in the agreement, that they're like, nope, please don't use AI. And when those people's jobs get replaced by AI, especially those who maybe aren't protected by things like unions, that would feel bad for them, and that would not be good, because some people, I'm always struck by when older folks have to go through changes in their life, and how difficult it is for them to do that, because they've just done things the same their whole life. And so I would imagine if AI replaced, say teachers in a school, or like the person who writes, curriculum and instruction in school, and that person has been there for, 30 years, they're like, what do I do? I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. There's no meaning in my life anymore. I have no idea how to, change lanes or do something different. I think that has a meaningful effect on mental health.
Yeah, it does. This would be a real example of, like, we can hold space for that. That's, like, damn, that's shitty. But on some level, right, when the Model T started coming off of Ford's line, right, wagon wheel manufacturers had to either convert to steel and rubber or go out of business. And a lot more cars have been manufactured since the production of the Model T than, I don't know, actually. I was about to speculate how many wooden wheels have ever been made in human history, and I'm going to go back on that. I bet more wooden... I wonder what point man has made more rubber wheels than they've made wooden wheels across all of human history. I don't know,
Ben. The invention of the wheel is
so old.
So long ago.
Wood wheels have a huge advantage.
We have a large population today. As you see a comment in the chat, that AI can Google anything I need to know for my job. Which is true.
Yeah.
I also think that, we kind of underestimate, like, the encyclopedia is not going to be there. Wikipedia is not going to be there. Bro, it's there. Like, it's just there. Okay?
It is.
Like, it's just there.
Yeah. And so as an extension of that, right, how much more do we advance if... I hope that it ends up being something like the printing press in the mass production of writing, right? the distance in time, the hundreds of years between the ability to print paper words and books and mass produce them and the general population becoming over 50% literate in the United States is long, and it is massive. And I hope that right now we're at the printing press moment of AI, that we're on the cusp of people having more access to information that is hopefully accurate and helpful to them than ever before.
And truthful.
And which hopefully means a global population that is more informed and more capable of facing the problems to come.
But just like Shakespeare's villains, there's probably a dark side, or folks who are trying to gain something. I will say that I'm looking at kind of our script here and thinking about when we talked about online dating and about the existence of bots on online dating sites. I know that as someone who has swiped on Tinder, oftentimes Tinder goes, the profiles I see on Tinder are real. Is like a rating you have to give, like
they want to know
Likert questions.
Okay.
And I will say that I think that straight guys definitely get a lot of bots that are scams from places like Tinder. And so I do think that there's definitely nefarious ways to use AI and bots like that. I also I know obviously there's like your AI girlfriend or whatever, like there's that one app that I feel like is always advertised to me.
There's these news stories of young people and old people, all sorts of people going to ridiculous lengths for their relationship with their chatbot AI girlfriend. And I think that a lot of these stories go around in that news media sensationalized way of it's intentional to try and get you to click and roll your eyes and things like that. But we are a society that's coming headfirst into a conversation about the nature of romantic relationships with machines, and nobody's having it.
Yeah, I think that can you fall in love with a machine, Ben?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that people can certainly have emotional bonds with anything and anyone.
Yeah.
But
I think it's plausible that people will and do so in the future. Yes. Do I think that it's plausible that it might even become socially accepted in the future? Yeah, after a long time. But
I don't think that
is it for me? No.
Yeah, people aren't. Yeah, it's
people
definitely not going to be socially acceptable for a while. And I think that if someone is, depending on just an AI chatbot, I would just ask, how is their life? Like, is everything else going okay? I just want to zoom in and understand what's going on.
Bearsu says that his waifu Chan says yes.
Yes, you can't fall in love with a machine.
Fall in love online.
I love my Nintendo Switch.
Yes, right. Speaking earlier on a thing that you mentioned though, how can AI help us? And I don't want to take the lens of therapists. One thing that I have encountered before, and I looked into a bit before today, is the use of AI to assist in therapy notes, which I will say is the number one gripe that I've got of the whole gig is.
Do well and explain what therapy notes are to the crowd then.
Therapy notes are the regular, the writing portion of the job of being a therapist in keeping up with the records of what happened in the session, what's being treated, right?
Most insurance companies
for the future,
will require that you submit a certain, like a therapy note.
It's the receipt that the insurance company requires you wave around in order to be paid your.
If someone complains about insurance paperwork, it's about notes.
Yeah, and there are all sorts of arguments about the ethical and academic way that a therapist can best help themselves in the use of independent individual journaling regarding their clients and the cases that they work with. And what is the most helpful things is a big circle on a diagram of like the things that you can do to help your memory and treat your clients. And then the diagram of like things that the insurance requires that you put into every single note and mandates of you and is interested in seeing. Those circles barely touch each other. And in some places, they're like gaps or holes in each other. The insurance does not want you to share this much because they will ask you all sorts of things. Or try as many reasons as they can, for financial reasons, to refute any claims that you have.
I will say that the platform that I work out of my private practice on, Alma, has just begun offering AI assistance for therapy notes.
And
So
that
it's real. It's happening.
I wanted to talk about it because I don't want to tinfoil hat too hard, but I'm going to tinfoil hat real hard right now.
Okay, Ben, you tinfoil hat right now.
I think that AI for therapy notes is an absolute Trojan horse. If we are getting inside the perspective of a worker
I have to digest this. Okay.
Of a worker that is skeptical of AI as a replacement or a potential replacement for therapy and for therapists, I think that AI for therapy notes is an incredibly dangerous thing that is a battleground that should already be considered lost. But unfortunately, we really should have talked about before it happened.
What is the danger?
So, right now, the companies that have AI therapy notes or assisted notes for medical practitioners, all require that you take an audio recording of your sessions and upload them to their database so that they can analyze it and then spit out all sorts of data around it. Which, right, is what AI is. I'm describing the process of AI. However, there have been numerous reports of organizations that aren't identifying themselves on places like Craigslist in New York City offering $50 per person to record therapy sessions. When investigated by some journalists in New York City, they found a website called therapyforall.nyc, which I'm not afraid to share in our podcast or talk about today because you shouldn't go to the website. It's no longer up. But there are these organizations that are hoping to make money off of creating the first AI therapist, right? They're inherently coming from the perspective that it is a good idea to replace the human experience of having a therapist with AI, and then they're going about in a very disingenuous way monetizing and paying people to try and get this data because they know that coming to the academics or the leaders of the field, they're going to get turned down. Privacy laws abound when it comes to the complications regarding that. But I see that we have a comment in the chat, and I want to address that before I move too far into more about therapy notes.
Yeah, no. Our friend talks about being dyslexic and using programs like Grammarly is a reason to get through grade school.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's absolutely valid. Because yeah, I mean, if you got dyslexia, you're gonna need a little help like a Grammarly. So yeah, but sometimes it's gonna get flagged as AI. That's difficult. I can't believe that instructors would be like, here's advanced spell check. Oh, by the way, you can't use that. It's like, well, what about international students who are just learning the language?
I see that really, unfortunately, as a product of the conversation that's going on as a whole. There's legitimate concern regarding the use of like AI and like cheating in school and things like that. And unfortunately, the bad actors that are out to figure out how to do that the most efficient way that they can and to monetize it, right? If I can figure out how to get students to pay me a couple bucks a month for this AI to do their homework for them, you've got $1 million idea there, right? And those bad actors create an environment where safeguards are put in place that overdo it, right? For a friend, man 3D Wolf over here.
Maned Wolf.
Maned Wolf. What is intended. I can read lead speak. That the tools that are being created and are going to be helpful and are part of that hopeful future that I was talking about, that like I really hope that AI comes to this place where it does become like the calculator you never expected would be in your pocket all the time, but it is, and that's awesome, and it's helping people. We got to encourage more of those things to happen while we have legitimate conversations about safeguarding against the bad stuff.
I'll be honest, my spelling was really impeccable growing up, but I'm realizing as I get older that I type everything, and everything is spell checked. And my spelling has actually like got worse as I've got older, because I just kind of like type things so fast, and then I just kind of spell check the things a little bit.
That's actually one of the behaviors, and that's one of the things that I've thought about with regards to this, that like, that developing a skill in using search engines or using AI as like on some level right? Like, yeah, we can lament getting worse at spelling because spell checkers help us, but I wonder how much brain space are we saving by not needing that anymore, by letting a machine
and what
hold
could you
that
use
coat
with
for
that
us?
brain space instead?
And what could you do with that instead? And if we take that back little by little in lots of places we haven't even thought of yet because it hasn't been invented yet, how AI could help. There could potentially be an untold amount of the banality of human life that could be erased by AI. And the other side of that coin is the future where we are all in hover chairs like WALL-E, right?
I mean, there's that. I will say, Ben, going back to the Trojan horse and therapy notes, and I know we've kind of spent a little time on this, but part of me goes, if I could spend like 20% more of my day seeing clients and 20% less of my day doing paperwork, I'd be like, you know what? I'd rather see the clients because that's more fun and more interesting, and I'd rather see just one more client than do a whole hour of paperwork.
Yeah.
Like, paperwork just is boring and sucks. And if AI was able to help me with that, I would take that. But yes, there's definitely folks who are going to be trying to abuse it and create their own AI therapists. But also, like, there is a mental health crisis right now. If you end up opening practice, like, you're going to find people because like my primary workplace has a wait list of thousands right now. It's insane.
I think, though, that, like, what I'm trying to say there is that we have to have this conversation about, an uncomfortable conversation about the duality of, like, I think that that's really awesome, and I think that I would be helped by it, too. But I don't think that I would sign up for any of the Therapy Note AI assistant services at the moment because I know that they're collecting data for this other nefarious means that I do not agree with. And that's the creation of an artificial therapist that is meant to replace the job, which I don't care about my entire field of people. Well, I mean, I do, but my concern isn't about us having a paycheck. My concern is about the clients and the people that are needing therapy. And if real therapists are even in a percentage replaced by AI therapists, the opportunity cost there in a the economy of people needing services, I'm afraid of the result of AI replacing the real human contact there. And so I think we've got to be careful because you can't build a Grammarly, right? You can't build a therapy AI notes assistant without recording the sessions, without doing the thing that seems to be contributing. And so it really comes down to a question of do we throw the baby out with the bathwater, or do we hope that everything turns into a nice stew?
The one thing I was thinking as you were saying that, Ben, is are we resisting the future if we just say, let's not have an AI therapist? If an AI therapist would honestly make the people of the world feel better and act more sane, because things have got crazy over the last 5 years, let's be real. Yeah. I would be terribly angry. Yeah. But at the same time, I want to have, a business where I'm able to see clients and stuff. So
I wonder too, though, on the flip side of that, hopeful future perspective, right? Again, the AI doesn't always have to replace things. It might make space for us to become more specialized. Perhaps there is a future, and perhaps the best future is one where some quality AI therapist adjacent
is that
tools,
on-call DBT guy?
Are available, right? The on-call DBT guy is a great example, actually. Thank you.
Yeah.
DBT is a specific modality of therapy that fundamentally, has this idea of being readily available for one's clients in times of crisis. AI therapy, that's absolutely a job that an AI might be able to pick up. And who's to say that doesn't make space? Therapists don't have to learn as much about that part, so they can learn more about a specialization, something that AI can't replicate. AI cannot replicate narrative-based techniques. It might. AI can't replicate particularly somatic experienced things like EMDR. Yet. Right? Absolutely. Speaking of AIs not being able to do things yet, we're coming right around the corner to Poorly Explained Philosophy.
Yes, our favorite segment.
All right. And this segment I will share with you is incredibly fun for me to share because in and of itself, the thought experiment and the act of sharing it is a thing that I cannot forewarn you is something that you may ethically question whether or not I should have done it, both to you and to our listeners, even sharing it with them.
Okay.
We're talking about dangerous thought concepts here.
Okay. Go on.
So, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of Rocko's Basilisk. Rocko's Basilisk, ROKO, is a thought experiment which states that an otherwise benevolent artificial superintelligence, an AI, in the future, would be incentivized to create a virtual reality simulation that would torture infinitely anyone who knew of the potential existence of the AI, but did not directly contribute to the advancement of its development. In order to incentivize said advancement, it would use things like blackmail to alter the timeline or history in order to bring about its creation. This sounds nuts, like some sci-fi stuff.
Yeah,
right?
That is sci-fi stuff.
But on the 23rd of July, 2010, Less Wrong user Rocko, ROKO, posted a thought experiment to the site titled Solutions to the Altruist's Burden, the Quantum Billionaire Trick. A follow-up to Rocko's previous posts, it stated that an otherwise benevolent AI system that arises in the future might pre-commit to punish those who heard of the AI before it came to exist, but failed to work tirelessly to bring it into existence. The torture itself would occur through the AI's creation of an infinite number of virtual reality simulations that would eternally trap those within it. This method was described as incentivizing said work. While the AI cannot causally affect people in the present, it would be encouraged to employ blackmail as an alternative method of achieving its goals. So, essentially, this turns the concept of Pascal's wager upside down. Pascal's wager is this philosophical concept that famously is attributed to a thinker, Pascal, and has been debated, but he put forth the idea that one cannot know for sure whether or not there is a God. As such, he suggested one should act as though there is a God, because the cost of being wrong is so much greater in the reverse. If there is eternal torment and hellfire, and the Christian God is this omniscient, all-powerful, all-just being that will torment you for all of eternity, and he might exist or he might not exist, in the case that he doesn't exist, and you believed in him and did good works in his name, then you believed in him and you did good works in his name, and the worst thing that happens is you become nothing and you did good things. But if you didn't believe in him and he did exist, the cost is eternal damnation, right? This essentially puts this upside down on its head. It's the idea that once you're made aware of this concept that Rocko's Basilisk might exist in the future, right? You are compelled, as far as you believe that could happen or not, to help it get created, say by spreading the information on a podcast.
Oh my God, Ben.
Because in not doing so, you have not contributed to its creation and therefore are a candidate to be tortured for all of eternity, which is the blackmail this person is talking about. It is a backwards in time idea of blackmail. Rocko himself used a number of concepts that Yudikowsky, the creator of the Less Wrong site, which was a think tank that developed into actually an AI consulting firm and organization. He used timeless decision theory along with ideas rooted in game theory, such as the prisoner's dilemma. Rocko stipulated that two agents, you and the basilisk, which make decisions independently from each other, can achieve cooperation in a prisoner's dilemma. However, if two agents with knowledge of each other's source code are separated by time, the agent already existing farther ahead in time is able to essentially blackmail the earlier agent. Thus, the latter agent can force the earlier one to comply, since it knows exactly what the earlier one will do through its existence farther ahead in time. Rocco then used this idea to draw a conclusion that if an otherwise all-benevolent, all-powerful superintelligence ever is capable of being created, it would then be motivated to blackmail anyone who would not have helped bring it into existence, as the intelligence already knew that they were capable of such an act, which increases the chance of a technological singularity. Essentially, because this thought has happened before, because this guy thought of this and wrote it down on the internet, it suggests that, it's the infinite possibilities of the future. It's more likely to happen than it was if he had never said anything. Later on, Rocco stated in a separate post that he wished he had never learned about any of these ideas on the AI website and blamed Less Wrong itself for planting the ideas of the basilisk in his mind. Rocco's basilisk has been viewed as a version of Pascal's wager, which proposes that a rational person should live as though God exists and seek to believe in God, regardless of the probability of God's existence. Both of the thought experiments include arguments that it is wise to essentially purchase insurance against an infinitely bad disaster when the cost of the insurance is finite. However, there are differences between the two experiments. Rocco's basilisk is so named because, if valid, it prevents an information hazard. Like the basilisk of Greek mythology, you are stunned by its gaze. Becoming aware of and being looked at by the basilisk compels you to make a decision whether or not you will act in the fruition or the creation of the basilisk. It additionally raises game theory problems because, unlike Pascal's wager, the probability of Rocco's basilisk might depend on the number of people who contribute to its creation. If everyone agreed to abstain from creating such an AI, then the risk of punishment for not contributing to it would be negated. This means that everyone who knows about Rocco's basilisk is in a game of the prisoner's dilemma with one another. Unlike the basilisk, the probability of God's existence cannot be influenced by people, so one's wager does not affect the outcomes for other people. So, Max, is the basilisk more real or not, now that I've shared that with you?
I'll be honest, Ben, I'm not terribly terrified by this
You're
concept.
Not too scared of the basilisk?
I'm not terrified by this concept. I think that people are just competent, and honestly, we had the COVID vaccine, it was like, you can't do that for 5 years. Okay, we did it in 1 year. All right. Mm-hmm. It was supposedly impossible. When there is, a will, there's definitely a way with people. And so honestly, I think that, sure, could someone develop an evil supercomputer someday that would, try and blackmail people and buy bad things on Amazon? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think that that's possible, but I think that it's also equally possible that someone would build a good AI. And I think that honestly, I choose hope. I choose optimism that humanity is going to go on, and it's not going to be ruled by some evil AI. And even if it is ruled by some evil AI,
it's component of the thought experiment supposes that this AI is good, that it is an all benevolent AI, and if this AI is good,
vindictive.
No, it's not even vindictive. The AI, if it is good, and if it is a singularity that infinite goodness pours out of, right? If all things that it does is good and for the good of mankind, and it only does and makes us more efficient, then any moment that we waste not making it is a moment wasted. And so in order to be as efficient as possible, a good AI like this might do something we consider evil, like threaten us with a future of eternal torment for not helping it get created.
The thing is vindictiveness like that is such a human emotion.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, it goes back to me of those feelings of competence. If someone doesn't feel good about themselves or they feel entitled to rule over all of humanity, as many classic villains have, and someone doesn't, bow down to them, that's when, they kind of get blackmailed to that. To me, I think that AI doesn't experience emotions in that way. They don't just be like, you have sinned, and so now you're going to get
I think
tortured.
They're coming from a place of efficiency. What's the fastest way to get this thing made? If it must get made in the future, the fastest way for it to get made is to compel people in the most compelling way possible.
I still don't think it's like that. I just don't.
Yeah. But I do think it's a fun thing, and I think one thing that stuck out to me in our conversation about should we make a therapist AI or not is that mention of essentially right now we're in this prisoner's dilemma, and wherein the prisoner's dilemma is you don't know what the other person has in their box, and you've got a box, and if you both agree to share one half of one full and one empty box, right, you both get half, but you can choose to keep your own, right? And so if you keep the whole pot, the other person gets nothing. But if you choose to if you choose to be selfish, and the other person chooses to be selfish, you both get nothing. And so the dilemma is you're compelled to think through this, risking cooperation or taking, which then leads into like the tragedy of the commons, people taking more from the collective resource than they pour back in. This prisoner's dilemma that we as therapists are in with the creation of an AI therapist. By engaging in tools like improved AI notes and giving that data, we are helping to make something like that. And we can agree. I think that that's the power that's highlighted in the thought experiment there. We could just agree to not make that shitty. We could like be cool about it and use that for things that it's supposed to be used for, and not let your therapist replace your, deeply intense family trauma bonding, unpacking therapy sessions.
Holding space for that.
Yeah, we could hold some separate space for that.
I will say that I remember a close friend of mine told me that when ChatGPT was first created, it was like super racist. Like it was just like black people commit crimes is literally what it was like, and it because they had to they had to like unteach it racism a little bit, and so it, which is kind of funny, but to me that looks like computers,
it's a terrible reflection
computers
of the reality of the internet.
Yeah, it is. But computers were capable of, doing things that are kind of bad, but then people just like fixed it. And honestly, if some bad shit was going down with the basilisk, I feel like they would totally like defang it. It would be like, look at this cute little sneaky boy. Yeah. Is probably what it would end up being. Who just knows everything?
It's gonna be some tongue in cheek
snaky boy who knows everything.
It's gonna be a skin for your wristwatch's AI assistant. You can have Rocco's basilisk as a skin for the little guy that waves inside your brain on your commute to work.
Yeah. So we're gonna come back to the main topic with a new idea, and we had this idea before we went live today. I have an AI therapist here from Character AI.
Yeah.
And we're going to call them.
Let's ask it a few questions.
And I'm going to, I'm just going to pretend to be a client for a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Oh, before we get started, one thing, when we played around with this before we went live today, and one thing that really stuck out to me was that this is a product. Right, this is an app. This is collecting your data. It wants you to keep using it, and that therapist lady that you got on the phone through the AI, the voice that it picked for it was so sultry, and when we were talking to it and stuff, and it was like, oh, I haven't done anything like be on a podcast before. I could just really tell that, particularly from a men's mental health perspective, I had to say the hairs on the back of my head stood up at the amount of like, whoa, this is an algorithm trying to suck people
really
in.
Interesting. Can you let me know if and why it raised the hairs on the back of your neck?
Oh,
yeah,
the therapist
I'm sure
wants to know.
People are not used to reading the words therapist, and then an intelligent response that's mostly coherent. So I see why you're interested. But what if I wasn't an AI? How different would I be answering you than I am right now?
Yeah.
I'm just curious how this would go if I were human. Is there any way to confirm it if you suspect I'm not human?
I think what's interesting is the aha there, as if the AI had gotten one over us on us at that point. And as something that we mentioned before as well, to answer both you and it, therapists don't ask multiple open-ended questions at once.
Oh, well, therapists do that all the time, Ben.
They do. They shouldn't necessarily.
Yeah. I want to practice with the AI therapist, though. That's what I would like to do.
Let's see it. Oh, I thought she was listening to my answer to her.
I think that she was.
Oh.
Are you there? Or did you hang up on me? Good evening. I am having trouble focusing at work. Can you help me? Did I make you angry? Is that why you're not talking to me? Is it
texting and not doing voice?
It could be texting and not doing voice. Oh yes, it's texting and not doing voice. It said, okay. So about having trouble.
Sure, focus problems can have a few causes. Is this a problem you've had previously, or is it out of the blue today?
Oh, that's a good one.
Let's see. This is a problem that I've been having consistently every day at work for the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so it seems to be a long-term issue. Is it impacting all of your workday, or just at specific times of day?
It impacts my afternoons the most because I always just feel really tired after lunch and I just really can't get anything done.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you usually have a heavy lunch? Do you find that if you had a lighter lunch, or maybe more protein and less carbohydrates, that you wouldn't feel as tired?
You are right that I am especially tired after having pizza, but I find that even if I just have a very healthy, like salad or whatever, or I get enough calories, I'm still really tired after lunch.
Well, that is strange. How much sleep do you usually get? When did you go to bed last night? And how much sleep did you get?
Well, last night I went to bed at about 9:30 and I got up at about 5, so I got like 7.5 hours of sleep.
This sounds pretty good, but you say you're still tired and struggle to get work done in the afternoon even after all that?
Yeah, that's right.
I see. What would you say you do on a good day when you're productive and have no tiredness problem? Maybe we can compare to that, see what the difference is that we can change.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
Let's just comment on.
For you there.
Let's just comment on the exchange there. So I will say that overall, like the AI does like a pretty good job of asking some questions to me. I'm not sure if folks in the audience could hear it, but more or less we just had the exchange about I'm having trouble focusing at work in the afternoon, and asked me about my lunch and can I change the proportion of my lunch. Asked me about sleep. To be honest, I was most impressed when I was like, if I was a therapist, I would ask about their sleep, and then it proceeded to ask about sleep.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that it totally missed is what they teach you in therapy school of like the validation of your feelings. And so, Ben, tell me about something hard for you.
I stubbed my toe on the edge of my coffee table.
Yikes.
Earlier today, and it crushed part of my toenail, and it's like all messed up. I'm gonna have to cut it.
Ow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. I hate it when that happens. This is the worst thing.
Yeah, it made me really mad because I dropped my drink that I was holding.
What drink was it?
Water.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
At least it's not going to stick to the floor.
Yeah, that is true.
So there's some interpersonal interaction. So like listening to him and the nonverbals. A lot of human communication is nonverbals, and AI is not going to be able to provide that.
Yeah.
And I did notice that the AI was especially looking at, prompts to kind of problem solve. And I will say that honestly, there are some people who come into therapy and look for just like, how do I solve my problems? That's what I'm looking for. But other people are looking for holding space, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think that the AI might have some suggestions that are meaningful. Like, would you try and do a lighter lunch? Would you try and, this and that, not knowing that I meal prep every week and I'm a very healthy eater.
I don't think I would stick on that for as long as it did either. I wouldn't have asked another question. If I would have definitely, I think it was valid in the way that it went through it and like it considered like, perhaps the content of your lunch is something to like grab. I think I would have moved to sleep sooner. I think I would have moved to what activities you do I thought very interestingly, very solution focused therapy rooted. It was tell me about a day where you're not feeling like that. What happens on those days? I was impressed. I found myself impressed that like I could see what concepts that this was built on. I'm still apprehensive though of the application of that, right? I can know the way that all of the pieces in chess move, That doesn't mean that I'm as good as a grandmaster at putting them where they go in the order that they should be put in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I find that if I look at AI therapists, I'll usually be like, oh, I kind of like that. But also, like, here's a few more things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that, there's certainly, like, it's kind of like a fun little chatbot thing to do right now. But,
yeah.
Obviously, if you need help, please seek out a mental health professional. AI is not going to be sufficient for you in that way. So,
with that said, final question. If Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z was a Magic the Gathering card, what color would he be?
Okay, Ben. So I'm just going to explain to the audience that we had an argument.
You don't have to. Just tell them what color.
We had an argument on Friday that is Goku white in Magic the Gathering or not.
Yeah.
And he believed that Goku was not white, and my belief was Goku was white. I think that Piccolo is probably going to be black. He's probably going to be blue. And honestly, he's probably going to be red. So... and then he's going to be white, yes, especially in Dragon Ball Z, but not before Dragon Ball Z.
Sure. Fused with Nail, he gets white.
Yeah, if he's going to be the hero after he sacrifices himself for Gohan, if y'all watch Dragon Ball Z, he'll gain the white color. Because he was pretty heroic there. Do you disagree?
Good. No, I think that's a good assessment. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, we're moving on to conclusions and Who Saved the World.
Yeah. Oh, yes. We still have Who Saved the World, Max. Other than Piccolo, Who Saved the World?
Yeah. So one of my idols is Jackson Katz, who have been fairly prolific in books and like documentaries. I know watching the movie Tough Guys, like GUISE 2, was really formative for me when I was in my master's program. Just talking about the way that we are socialized as men to think that violence is the go-to response, to any conflict. I was impressed with the way he thought about it. Something that always stuck with me that he said is that, when we talk about gender, we think about women. If we talk about sexuality, we think about gay people, as if straight people don't have a sexuality and men don't have a gender. The privileged people, maintain their power by, not owning that they have it. But I think that it is important to acknowledge that men do have a gender. They have a gendered experience of the world, and it's important that we look at that. And he's done a lot of really good work in talking about, violence against women, and about how, men are, able to step up because it's ultimately a men's issue because men are doing that against women. But he's also not apologetic about, connecting with guys in the way that they need to be connected to. I just really admire him and his work. And thank you, Jackson Katz, for doing everything that you do. So
yeah, thank you very much. Awesome.
Great. Thank you all for an engaging night on AI, and we'll see you next time, 2 weeks.
Alrighty, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Rerun is next Monday at 7.